Hey, what's up? John Sonmez from simpleprogrammer.com. And today I'm going to do a video about asking my employer for feedback. I got a question on this, pretty simple question. But before I get into that, let me introduce you to my friends at Hire.com. They are a sponsor for Simple Programmer. Greatly appreciate their sponsorship. It helps me to be able to reach more people, and I like them. They're pretty awesome, and I'll tell you why. It's because they make it really easy for you to apply for a job. Instead of blasting out resumes and cover letters, you just go to Hire.com/Simple Programmer. Make sure you do the Simple Programmer part. I'll tell you why in a minute here. And what you do is you fill out one application, and then what happens from there, if you're selected, now there is a filtering process, I have to warn you, it's based on geographic regions and a bunch of other high-tech algorithms that Hired uses, but if you get through there, then what happens is that employers will look and they will find you, and they will send you interview requests. So with the salary requirements or what the expected salary is on there, and now you don't have to go through this whole song and dance of back and forth. You can just accept interviews and then go to your interviews, and there you go. And that makes it a lot easier. So I like this process. It makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know why someone didn't come up with this sooner. I think this is the future of job searching. So I definitely recommend that you go to Hire.com/Simple Programmer. And if you go using that link, when you do get a job with Hire.com, you'll get $2,000, a bonus they give you instead of $1,000. So make sure you go to Hire.com/Simple Programmer and tell them I sent you. All right. Now, let's get into asking my employer for feedback. So I got a question from Jack, pretty simple question. He says, what's the best way to ask my employer for feedback? How often should I ask for this? And he's got some background info. I'll read this. He says, a few months ago, I have started my first IT job. I got a lot of time and freedom to learn new skills. I'm doing my best and I think it is going to be fine, but I often wonder what my employer thinks of my performance. However, he does not give much feedback, and also not from my colleagues who are rarely at the office because they are working for other companies. While I can handle the independence, I feel a strong need for feedback so that I know what I should work on. So here's actually, I think I've got another question here. Okay, so someone else commented on this. I had my review this year and I asked for what measurable goals for career development should we set so we can review them next time. My boss said, well, just do what you do, but better. But how will I measure it? Boss, I don't have to tell you I was a bit disappointed. I tried to continue the subject, but my boss was getting nervous and annoyed, so I had to drop it. How to deal with these kind of bosses. So, okay, so asking for feedback, dealing with this type of thing. There's a few things to think about here. Okay, there's a difference between asking for feedback to help you do your job better and validation so you can feel good about yourself. One is needy and one is like productive, kick-ass, doing the best job that you can, right? If you are looking for feedback, if you're looking for someone to pat you on the back to tell you, hey, you did a good job, right? Or that you're doing a good job, that's sort of validation. That's kind of a needy thing, right? That can annoy people because they don't want to have to keep on congratulating. They want you to be able to do the job without being pat on the head and saying, oh, you're doing a good job. And they don't want you to keep on coming up to them and say, hey, am I doing a good job? Do you like it? Do you like the coat I'm wearing? They don't want that. Nobody wants that, right? They don't want that. But what someone does want, right? You always got to flip the script. Always flip the table around and figure out what does it look like from the other side. So what would you want? Would you want someone coming up to you and panting like a dog and saying, did I do a good job? Am I a good doggy? Yes, you're a good doggy. Yes, you're a good doggy. No, you don't want that, right? But what would you want if you had an employee and you wanted them to improve, right? So how would they get feedback? What would you have them do? You'd have them probably come up maybe to you and say things like, here's what I did, and this is why I did that, and I'm going to continue doing this unless I hear otherwise from you, right? Basically, what you want them to do is to say, look, I'm giving you information, and based on this information, this is what I'm doing. And if you tell me not to, I'll stop. But aside from that, I'm going to do what I think is best. And here's why I'm doing it, right? That's better. That's what it is it's a difference between opt-in and opt-out, right? So you know what I'm talking about? If you've got an opt-out, right, then it's basically like, okay, you're in, I'm going to keep on asking you for feedback. I'm going to keep asking you questions until you opt out of it. If it's an opt-in, then it's like, okay, look, you don't have to join, you don't have to subscribe, but here's the information. If you want to comment or you want to get involved in it, great. So I don't know if I explained that quite as good, but essentially it comes down to this. It's basically, where is the pressure? Where is the obligation? Okay, if you're asking someone for feedback all the time, right, and especially if you're asking them in such a way that it's obvious that it's for your validation, so you can feel better about yourself, so you can feel good, you can get that pat on the head, good doggy, right? Then it creates sort of an obligation on their part. They have to respond, they have to reply, right? You send them an email and say, how am I doing? And they're like busy, and they're like, okay, I guess I got to say, yes, you're doing a great job, it's awesome, good job, right? And it may be wasting their time, because if you're doing a good job, you know, I'll tell you if you're doing a shit job. I don't need you to like ask me if I'm doing a good job, right? That's the thing. But on the other hand, if you're like giving a lot of information, if you're like, here's all the information that you need, boss, about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, right? And if you have a problem with anything, then feel free to respond and tell me to stop, or you know, or tell me that there's an issue with what I'm doing. That's much more relaxed. As someone who's your boss reading the email, they don't feel like they have to do anything. They don't feel like they have to respond. They're not trying to. They don't have to validate you. They don't have to pat you on the head and say good dog. But if they feel inclined to, if they want to comment on something that you're doing, because it is an exceptionally good job, or because they want to tell you to stop, then they can. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't create more burden, more pressure. And again, I don't think your intentions are bad when you're asking for feedback, but you just got to think about it from the other side and how it is. At the same time, you can't totally ignore, right? So here's what I've done in the past, right? Is I feel like information is the thing that you want to send up, as much information as possible, right? And not validation, because not the request for validation. It's information. So I did this video on doing a weekly report. Now I'll rehash this quickly here. What I've always done in my jobs as a developer, at least most of my career, that's really helped a lot, is I would weekly send a report of what I did every day and summarize it, and then any thoughts that I had and what I was planning on doing next week, that kind of basic stuff, right? And I never asked in that, how am I doing? Can you give me some feedback on how I'm doing? Because I don't want to create a burden. I don't want that person to have to reply, my boss to reply to the report, but I want them to see what I'm doing and have the opportunity to stop me or intervene or tell me if I'm doing something wrong. And then what that comes down to is, like, if there was a problem in the future, and someone said, and it's happened before, and someone says, oh, you're not doing your job, or you're not doing a good job, or what you're supposed to, then my argument is very clear. It's like, look, every week I sent you a report. I told you what I did. I told you why I did it. I told you what I was planning on doing next week, right? I sent it to you. And never did you stop me. Never did you say not to do it. Never did you say that I wasn't doing the right thing, or spending enough time, or doing a good job. So how can I be blamed at this point? You see what I'm saying? Like, I had a very defensible position. Whereas if you're asking for feedback all the time, and even if you get feedback, they might just be blowing smoke up your ass. So think of it that way. Just think about turning it around. How can you basically give enough information to get feedback if it's necessary, without being a burden, without seeking validation, without being needy, without being I need a pat on the head good dog, right? And just and do what you're supposed to do, because that's the key there, right? And sometimes there are going to be bad bosses that are going to be ignoring what you're doing. At least you'll have covered your ass by having that weekly report if you send the weekly report. But there's no way around that, right? I mean, if someone's not going to give you feedback at all, then you just got to do the best that you can do, and you don't necessarily need that feedback, right? If you're giving enough information, though, I guarantee you, and you're not doing the right job, you're going to get feedback. You're going to find out what's wrong. So that's kind of my best answer for this. I know this is not necessarily what you might want to hear. You might want to figure out how you can get better feedback, but you know, if you're giving a lot of information and you're doing a good job, no feedback is good feedback. Unless your boss is just an idiot and doesn't care, in which case you're not going to get feedback back anyway, right? But you will have a lot of cover your ass material by sending those weekly reports out, especially if you CC your boss's boss as just an FYI, just in case my boss is out type of thing. Watch the video on creating a weekly report if you want to find out more about that. All right, good question, Jack. Appreciate it. If you want to ask me a question, you can email me at john@simpleprogrammer.com. And if you like this video and you want to subscribe, want to get more of these videos, click that subscribe button below. Don't forget, click the bell if you want to get every single video the second it's released. I know some of you do. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.